The term taxi war refers to the tough wars fought between taxi associations and individual minibus taxi drivers in South Africa from the late 1980s onwards to the present. The multi-billion rand minibus taxi industry carries over 60% of South Africans' commuters. Generally speaking, these commuters are of lower economic class. Wealthy individuals in South Africa drive their own cars for safety and convenience. The industry is almost entirely made up of 16-seater commuter Toyota buses, which are sometimes unsafe or not roadworthy. Minibus taxi drivers are well known for their disregard for the rules of the road and the proclivity for dangerously overloading their vehicles with passengers. Due to an effectively unregulated market and the finesse of competition for passengers and lucrative routes, taxi operators banded together to form local and national associations. These associations soon exhibited mafia-like tactics, including the hiring of hitmen and all-out gang warfare. Taxi associations have also engaged in anti-competitive price fixing. Notable taxi operators, including the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association, CATA, and the Cape Organization for the Democratic Taxi Association, CODATA, in Cape Town. The South African nation is divided into thugs and cowards. The thugs pushes the cowards, rob them and humiliate them. The more violent the thugs, decent, gentle and law-abiding citizens, most of them black, because most of the population in South Africa are blacks, live in fear and shame. The ACN government gives way to the thugs on almost every question and probably agrees with them anyway. President Cyril Ramaphosa cranes before them in a charming way, with huge financial benefits to himself. As allegation states, construction companies either coax the construction mafia and hand over their money, or else quit construction. The taxi gangsters break every rule of the road, terrorize their passengers, murder competing drivers, and set fire to buses and probably trains too. The ACN government, again, does nothing. In the face of the heinous farm mothers of old people who are often tortured to death, Julius Malema sings, "Kill the boer, kill the farmer," in front of a large cheering crowd, and the ACN again does nothing. Worse than that, as Malema himself pointed out, a South African court exonerated his singing the song. Malema is above the law, so many South Africans says. Will anybody in authority, anybody, take on the talks and protect the gentle majority? At least the future holds onto that person to come true. Taxis are a popular way for many tourists and locals to get around, but in South Africa, the industry has gained widespread associations with violence and crime. In 2018, 11 people died and 4 were left critically injured when gunmen opened fire as a minibus taxi was traveling along a rural road in eastern South Africa. All of the victims were members of a taxi association. In 2021, at least 7 people were killed and several others were injured in a taxi-related shootings in various neighborhoods, and the industry actually came to a standstill as shooting and conflict took place between drivers. The deaths are just as some of those that have occurred since the inception of South Africa's minibus taxi industry in the 1980s. As drivers battled for customers and joined taxi associations in an attempt to keep their jobs secure. Speaking to the New York Times in 2008, Mark Shaw, the director of the Global Initiative Against a Transactional Organized Crime, explained, "Large part of the industry have begun to look very mafia-like, where you defend and expand your business tough through the use of violence. The most lucrative routes are long distance, such as between Johannesburg and Zulu-Natal. That's why there is so much conflict." Jackie Dodge, a former analyst with the Commonwealth Secretary in London, has described the taxi industry as one of the first avenues for black capital accumulation after the country's apartheid government deregulated public transport, and explained it quickly became a contested economic terrain. Taxi associations have developed as informal agents of regulations, protection and extortion. He said this in a study published by the Center for Study of Violence and Reconciliation in Cape Town, adding, "Taxi violence has become more widespread, decentralized, and criminal in character. Links between the taxi association and political assassinations mean the mafia is tough to stop. Ntobiko, secretary of Nassfield Dub West Taxi Association, spoke about the ongoing death after 5 drivers were shot and killed and 7 people were injured in an incident in May. The killing of our taxi drivers have been going on for a very long time. I would like to believe that this is our 7th taxi driver shooting in this year. We are fighting over roads, he said. He also continued, just few days ago, one of our drivers picked up a passenger in Carolina, Orlando, and as they were about to drive off, a car appeared next to the taxi and started shooting. We are literally dying over our driving routes. The exact number of people who have died as a result of the taxi mafia is unclear, but almost 2,000 people lost their lives in the 90s alone. According to the contracts killing database Assassination Witness, 43% of the assassinations in South Africa between 2000 and 2017 were related to the taxi industry. On the 15th of May of 2018, Johnson Ndaka, chairman of the Kipton Park Taxi Association, KITA, was assassinated in his driveway. He was shot 29 times as he was returning home from lunch with his wife and daughter, both of whom witnessed his gruesome killing. His wife was also shot but survived after pretending to be dead. 3 days previously, another KETA member, Jacob Thomas, was also killed by a hail of bullets while in his car. In all, 6 members of this taxi association were assassinated during the first half of 2018 alone, bringing the total to more than 50 since 2007. The Assassination Witness database shows that there were 127 taxi-related hits across South Africa in 2018, 48 of which occurred in Gauteng. The mass taxi transport industry in South Africa has its origin as a grey market service providing transport and economic opportunities to black South Africans during the apartheid regime. When referring to the taxi industry in South Africa, the common understanding is mass public transport using 16-seater minibuses. The most commonly used vehicle today is the Toyota bus. Since the country's democratic transition in the 1990s, the industry has been regulated and it means the core means of transport for the country's workforce. 69% of South African households commute by taxi. The industry also employs hundreds of thousands. However, since it has its origin as a grey market service, regulation has never been entirely effective at bringing the sector under the rule of law. The industry has grown without enforced state-led constraint and has long been notorious for its violence. Jackie, from low-intensity war to mafia war, taxi violence in South Africa from 1987 to 2000, Violence and Transaction Series, the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation States. Over the years, however, the nature of these violence has changed from involving predominantly shooting outs at taxi ranks to more target violence in a form of taxi hits, primarily motivated by competition over taxi routes or leadership battles within taxi associations. Assassinations, whether contracted for political, social, or economic gain, have an extremely detrimental impact on South Africa's ongoing democratic project and often fragile institutions, creating fear, uncertainty, and instability. The homicide statistics kept by the South African Police Service are not disaggregated by motive of killing or other characteristics, making it difficult to measure the scale and scope of targeted violence. However, the GI Tug's ongoing assassination monitoring project, Assassination Witness, is able to shed some light on the trends and regional dynamics in taxi-related assassinations and contextualize the violence in this industry along with other types of targeted assassinations in South Africa. Assassination Witness compiled a database of hits and attempted hits in South Africa over the period of 2000 to 2018. The sample of the resources of the database, which provides access to local, regional, and national news context published in print media, supplemented with research of online news sources. The data in the Assassinations Witness database is constantly under review and present an evolving picture of the nature of assassinations in South Africa. Taxi-related incidents are by far the largest contributor to assassination trends in South Africa during this period and since the invasion of this industry. Although there have been some spike in taxi hits over the period of 2001 and 2007, since 2016, they have reached unprecedented level and have continued to grow sharply, reaching a high of 127 hits in 2018. There are distinct provincial characteristics. Taxi Association in KwaZulu-Natal remains consistently high throughout the data period. By contrast, the Eastern Cape experienced a drastic increase from 2015 to 2017 and then declined in 2018. Gauteng has seen an increase since 2012, but the number of hits remains below 16 until 2018, when it reached a record high of 48. The highest count of any category in any province. Increases in taxi-related assassinations occurred across almost all provinces, suggesting that some taxi incidents occurring in one province may be linked to disputes that began in another province. This is also consistent with disputes over long-distance taxi routes. We can look at Gauteng as a specific case for contextualizing this trend. The drastic increase in violence in 2018 can be connected to the route dispute between rival taxi associations, including Keta and its competitors. There have also been increasing attempts by government to find new ways to regulate and transform the transport industry. In 2010, the city of Johannesburg introduced a new bus rapid transport system and tried to incentivize the taxi operators to trade a taxi license and routes for shares in the bus companies. This was met with multiple complications, including increased competition on routes and even violence, adding to the complexity of the situation. At the same time, the taxi operators were entering the bus industry. Key leaders of Johannesburg gangs also started to become increasingly involved in the taxi industry, primarily to transport drugs and launder money, a modus operandi that is common throughout the country. Interviews conducted in October of 2019 revealed that taxi violence was particularly bad in Soweto, Alexandra, Midrand, and Johannesburg city center. The disputes have been exacerbated by increase in access to firearms. According to interviewers, small private security companies that had lost contracts in recent years had gone bankrupt or were on the verge of bankruptcy have started to sell their firearms to the taxi industry, thereby fueling the taxi wars. In response to spikes of the taxi violence, the members of the Executive Council of Roads and Transport to Gauteng closed several routes and taxi ranks in 2018 and 2019. However, according to the database, which has continued to document a hit throughout 2019, these closures have not had the intended impact of reducing violence, although preliminary findings for January to June of 2019 do show a slight decline. Preliminary mid-year findings and generally lower than half of the final year count. These came after several peace agreements facilitated by the provincial government failed to curb killings of passengers and drivers and taxi owners. On the 6th of April of 2019, MEC said there have been no attacks on members of the taxi industry since the route closures. In response to continued violence in Gauteng, the provincial prime, David, established the Commission of Inquiry into minibus and taxi-type service violence. Mukura explained that he was concerned the violence in the taxi business would worsen despite efforts by the law enforcement and government. The impact of these assassinations is far-reaching and the steady increase is worrisome. Targeting killings within South Africa's taxi industry has been major stimulus for violence elsewhere. The 2021 Cape Town taxi conflict was a violent tough war between the minibus taxi operators, Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association, and the Congress for Democratic Taxi Association over lucrative taxi routes in Cape Town, South Africa. The conflict was part of a long-running series of conflicts that are parts of the ongoing taxi war in South Africa. The conflict picked up in intensity in July of 2021 over the B97 taxi route between Beverly and Pearl. The spike in taxi violence resulted in the thousands of people being unable to get to their jobs, resulting in pay cuts, job losses, and economic hardship. Western Cape Transport (MEC) stated that 22 murders and 29 attempted murders resulting from taxi violence were recorded between the start of July and the 16th of July of 2021. As of the 23rd of July of 2021, a total of 83 taxi conflict-related deaths in the Western Cape were recorded since the start of 2021. A total of 24 people had died in the conflict in the month of July of 2021. In response to the violence, the West Cape provincial government temporarily closed the B97 taxi routes for 2 months in an effort to prevent further violence. South African National Defence Force personnel were deployed alongside South African Police Service personnel to help secure affected transport routes. The July spike in violence coincided with a large-scale rioting in the provinces of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. On 2nd of August, both Qatar and Kodata met with National Transport Minister to mediate an end to the conflict, after which they announced that a truce agreement had been reached. The government stipulated that should violence break out again, then all affected minibus and taxi routes will be closed for a period to be determined by the Department of Transport. Thank you so much for watching this very video on Frank Speaks. If you find this video interesting, do well to like, drop a comment, and also subscribe to this YouTube channel. And the last request, do well to share this video